Thanks for checking out a brand new podcast series that I am going to be doing covering the real life Detroit Lions this time. This is the very first episode. A few topics I want to get into, and really just sort of a lightly scripted, but really an unscripted look into the Detroit Lions here as I venture into the world of, again, real life football versus not fantasy football, but I guess gaming football, which is what I'm mostly known for here on this channel. So, again, first off, thanks for checking this video out, whether it's live or not. I got my phone here near me. I'll keep an eye in the chat if there's questions as we go. And before we even get into the agenda, again, I have been doing mostly gaming streaming over the years, and was a writer for Operation Sports for a while. And again, just doing a lot of like franchise coverage, and figured, hey, this might be a fun thing to kind of take out and start doing similar things, just kind of discussing real life teams. In this case, the teams that I follow, which for football would be the Detroit Lions, unfortunately. So. But I do love them. You know, we gotta fight through it. I know there's a lot of Lions fans who feel very similar that you can't pull away, but why would I want to? You got to support your teams through and through, and that's what we're looking to do here. And so, again, as I mentioned, I've done a lot of gaming, but I've always been a huge sports fan as well. That's kind of what got me even into sports was gaming. So there's a lot of parallels there with those two things. And so just wanted to put that out there if you're wondering what this is and all those sort of things. And again, I'll get in a little bit more about me as we go over these different episodes and so on, even a future schedule, which I haven't set exactly yet. But yeah, I mean, just, Mike Lowe, it's not, as some people know, it's not even my real name. It's a pseudonym I just use for kind of a pen name. My name's a lot harder to pronounce than the last name Lowe there. And so, again, but we're here just to talk Lions. We're here to really hopefully shed a little bit of different light. I try to keep this podcast positive. Certainly anybody can be critical of a team that's had some struggles over the years, to put it lightly. And but again, just looking to have some honest discussions, whether it's live, like we're doing here on YouTube, and eventually up on different podcast, any place you could find them, really, Spotify and so on. But the idea here is with the YouTube ones that are live, or even if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to get some visuals along with this. So we'll be doing a lot of different things on PFF. And really just having an open conversation, again, lightly scripted, but not entirely scripted, because I feel that's really the best way to get kind of a genuine conversation. And so on the left there, you can see that we have a list of agenda items. We're going to talk about whether the Lions should be tagging Kenny Golladay, if there is a way to fix the defense overnight, which probably sounds like a tall task or tall order there, whether the Lions should draft a quarterback at number 7 overall. And then finally, we're going to end this episode doing a live Lions mock draft on PFF.com, which has been a pretty cool tool. If you haven't checked that out, I can show you what that all looks like. So again, welcome everyone. I super appreciate it. If you're interested in seeing more Detroit Lions coverage, do subscribe to the channel. That would be great. I'm on Twitter at MikeLowe47. And for now, at least, I'm going to be continuing to do this sort of line stuff with that pen name. We'll see if I want to change that in the future. So. But yeah, let's jump in. So, again, we're talking about this first topic of tagging Kenny Golladay, right? And so as I pull up Kenny Golladay here, this is his profile on PFF.com. He is by far the most high-profile free agent that the Detroit Lions had this offseason. The Lions are in a really, really rough salary cap spot. They don't have a lot of money to play with. And I think in a normal situation, especially before the team had traded Matthew Stafford away, I think Kenny Golladay is probably a guy that they would have wanted to keep, even with a franchise tag, although ideally maybe some sort of backloaded extension would have been nice. But, Kenny Golladay, he is 27 years old there. As you can see on the screen, if it's a little small, it's 27.3. He's born in November. So he just turned 27. And, you got to think he's going to get it probably at least a 4-year extension if he were to sign with the Lions, and perhaps the same thing on the open market. And that puts him in at the 31 age bracket there. Now, that's this exact same age that Marvin Jones Jr. was this season. And so, he would be this upcoming season. So it's not like the guy won't be able to play at 31. This isn't a game of Madden where the receivers just fall off the face of the earth when they turn 30. But it's going to be a really, really pricey thing, and the Lions don't have a ton of cap space. And so I think I don't think they actually know the exact franchise tag numbers right now, but it's going to be like north of $15 million a year, 16, 17 million a year for Kenny Golladay, and he's worth it. But is he worth it on a team in the situation where they are right now? in my opinion, because of course this is what this show is really, just my opinions, I guess, it's no. I just don't think they can. As much as I like Kenny Golladay, there are a few reasons why I don't think the team should go in this direction of extending Kenny Golladay. The biggest one is that Matthew Stafford's gone, and Kenny Golladay fit that role that Calvin Jones, or what am I saying? Calvin Johnson fit when he was here. And so that big receiver who can go up, jump ball, really pull down those deep balls by Matthew Stafford. We don't have a quarterback like Stafford on this team at this very moment. Jared Goff, I think I'm probably a little bit more optimistic than most people. I'm hoping to see him rebound. I'm sure all Lions fans are hoping to see him rebound to what he's done a couple of years ago and before, including taking a team to a Super Bowl. But he doesn't necessarily have that same deep accuracy. He's not got a terrible arm, but his accuracy deep is very, very, very different from Matthew Stafford. And so I worry about Kenny Golladay because that's what he does, right? He goes up and he pulls balls down. And so what the biggest fear in all of this is that you sign Kenny Golladay to something $16, $17 million a year, and he's just not able to reproduce the production he's had. It's not like he'd be terrible, but would he be putting up Pro Bowl numbers with Jared Goff as his wide receiver? And I don't think he necessarily would, and that's a really risky thing, for $16, $17 million a year at a receiver who is just turned 27, but also because this team doesn't have a lot of salary cap space and has so many other holes. So again, I think that's something worth I'm hoping the Lions give a really, really strong consideration. It's not that I or the Lions or whomever don't like Kenny Golladay. He's a great player, and he'll have a great 2021 wherever he lands. But just the makeup of this team and where they're at, even if it is just a third-round compensation pick they get for him, the Lions are going to be better off doing just that. And it's sad because, again, I'm a huge Kenny Golladay fan. But it's just not going to fit where this team is at right now. Had they kept Stafford, they'd have more cap space. You could have maybe tried one more year, maybe fixed the defense quick. But it just doesn't make a lot of sense, in my opinion. So, again, it's just not really it's not a fit for the Lions. They just don't have the money for this sort of thing. So, as we look at the second topic, again, we mentioned a second ago, needing money for other things. Well, the defense is a huge need. This defense was horrific. I was reading on PFF somewhere that they had something like it was like one of the worst defenses in the past 10 years as far as like predicted yardage allowed, or like expected yardage, I think it's called. And so, what I have up on the screen is, can we fix the defense overnight? And is this a trick question? Yes, it is a trick question. But it leads me into some other topics about the Lions on this first episode. More than anyone, yes, the defense was so bad. I watched every game last year. It was awful. Terrible, terrible defense. Patricia's scheme, terrible. Patricia's coaching, terrible. But the thing is, the way the draft lines up, and we'll see this when we get to that mock draft, it's just not lending itself to that. And also, again, the cap space, not lending itself to fixing this defense. As you look on the screen here, we're looking at the PFF Detroit Lions lineup. And so this is showing basically the player grades on offense and defense. And we're just kind of focused on the defense for this part. By the way, Golladay, 81.6. I believe he was the second highest rated offensive player, only behind Taylor Decker. But on defense, let's just look at players who are north of 80. There's one, and it's Trey Flowers. And outside of that, you got a few guys floating around the 60s, even if we look above 65. So we're talking, we go from 83 down to 65 for a couple guys, Deshaun Hand and Duron Harmon. That's almost a 20-point drop. So we have a top 10 end, and then we have the 43rd highest rated safety. Guys, there's only 32 teams, right? So, there were 11 backups or 10 backups better than Duron Harmon, and he was our second best defensive player, our third best defensive player. But even worse for Hand, 60th overall. 126th interior defensive lineman, which he split some time at the end and in the middle as well. So, I get it. Yeah, the defense is a thing. And so it is a trick question. Can you fix this defense overnight? You can't. And so, therefore, it's really important for the Lions and even the Lions fans who are watching, the draft and watching this offseason unfold, is you're not going to fix this overnight. So don't force it. Don't take the 18th best player in the draft at number 7, or if you trade down to 12, because you need defense. Yes, we need defense, but we're not going to fix this overnight. We're not going to fix it in one round of free agency. We're not going to fix it in one draft. You're going to need 100 other pieces. And so grab what you can and work as you go. And I think that's something that the Lions absolutely are going to need to focus on. Is just, a lot of teams focus on best player available. That's not a new approach by any means. But I think it's going to be really important for Brad Holmes and his staff to look at that and to be okay with that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with them doing so. And we'll see. I think there's going to be some surprises with Brad Holmes as we go, just looking at his track record of what he's done with his first-round picks. Very, very aggressive in trading them both up and down, moving up to get Goff, trading first-round picks entirely for players like Jalen Ramsey and so on. So it'll be interesting to see. It's funny, all these mock drafts I look at with the Lions at number 7, I think we're going to look back on all of this and say, oh, wow, we were completely wrong because they did something completely unorthodox with that pick. Would they trade up the number 2 if they really, really like Zach Wilson or Justin Fields or something like that? Would they even try to trade up the number 1 with all the extra draft capital that they've acquired, go after Trevor Lawrence? I mean, again, these sound crazy, right? But who would have thought some of these moves that Brad Holmes has done over the years, trading especially first-round picks the way he's done? So again, are we fixing the defense overnight? No, we're absolutely not. And so I think it's really important to keep that as a focal point as a Lions fan to know, we don't need to stretch. And if they feel Micah Parsons has character issues and so on, the best defensive player in the draft, it's not the worst thing in the world to pass him. There are other really, really good players there that they'll be able to work on and perhaps use to start building this team the right way, hopefully. So what about drafting a quarterback at number 7? Well, in my opinion, it's certainly on the table. It depends, right? I think it's really the best way to put it, because as we talk about best player available, do the Lions need a quarterback? Yeah, they certainly can. I don't know for sure. Like I said, I'm probably a little bit more optimistic on Jared Goff than most, just because I want to see what's out there. We have so many other holes that I'm willing to let's roll the dice with Goff here and see. Maybe he can reinvent himself a little bit and get back to what he was doing. But let's put some tools around him and just see where it goes. So again, 7's an option. They certainly wouldn't be stretching really by picking a quarterback at 7 if one of the top 4 guys fall there. But let's take a look at exactly what we're talking about with that. So if the Lions were looking quarterbacks, right? This is PFF again. This is sorted by the best quarterbacks in order according to PFF's rank. So of course there's Trevor Lawrence, and of course the Lions have the 7th pick, right? So we can keep that number in mind. So PFF rank number 1, Zach Wilson's PFF rank number 2, PFF rank, this is all positions, number 3 is Justin Fields. So, right away, if one of these 3 guys fall to 7, the question on the screen is, would the Lions draft a quarterback number 7 overall? And yeah, I think they would. If we're going to say Trevor Lawrence isn't falling, but if Zach Wilson or Justin Fields falls, certainly these guys are in the mix. When you're talking about best available player, when you're talking about position of need, absolutely on the table. I think where it gets a little interesting, of course, is with Trey Lance. Again, the Lions pick 7th, Trey Lance 10th. I like Trey Lance. I'm actually pretty optimistic about him. I think if he can come in and find a situation where he's not thrown to the fire, which I would really hope the Lions wouldn't. I think when we heard that they were trading Matthew Stafford, my fear was they were going to trade Stafford, draft Lance, and throw him into the mix. And I thought that was going to be really, really bad. So I'm actually really excited they got Goff back. Certainly handcuffs us a little bit financially, but it helps us so much long-term, because that's how the Lions got that 2nd first-round pick, by taking on the contract. Otherwise, the Rams couldn't afford Stafford. By taking on the contract of Goff, we scratched their back, and they scratched ours by giving us another first-round draft pick there in 2023, I guess it is. And so Lance would be a fit because he could sit behind Jared Goff for at least a year, possibly 2. I think Aaron Rodgers sat for 2 full years, if I'm not mistaken, behind Favre. And so, it's not the worst thing. You get the 5th-year player option now on a first-round draft pick. And so the Lions would still, even if he sat 2 full years, they would still get 3 years to evaluate Trey Lance, work on an extension, et cetera, et cetera. And truthfully, by 3 years, they're going to probably have a pretty good idea of what they have in Trey Lance and whether or not they want to commit long term to him. So the question is, would you pick him at 7? And it's debatable, right? There's a lot of different needs. And perhaps we can answer the Trey Lance question when we get into the mock draft. But I think right now, it's perhaps, right? It's going to depend what else is there. It's going to depend a lot on player interviews that teams are able to do, perhaps virtually and things like this. And it's also going to come down to whether or not Brad Holmes and his staff like Trey Lance, if they see him as a fit. But I can tell you this, after Trey Lance, it gets a little bit bleak, right? There's a big drop. Mac Jones is probably still going to go in the first round, if not the mid-first round. There are a lot of quarterback-hungry teams. So Mac Jones is going to be a player that likely, very, very likely, is not going to fall to the Lions in the second round. I like Mac Jones. I, for a while, thought it'd be kind of nice to take one of the Alabama receivers, grab Mac Jones in the second round, and let's see what happens. But the more we're looking at things now, it just doesn't seem like he'll be there. You could also make a similar argument for Kyle Pitts and Kyle Trask out of Florida. Go grab Pitts number 7 or trade back slightly maybe and get Pitts, and you could go Kyle Trask. So again, if you're looking for a combo, because a lot of people will say, I've seen a lot of different mocks kind of mention, Kyle Trask is kind of a product. You can see his huge 2020 jump. He's a product of Kyle Pitts. Well, okay, one way or another, if you have Pitts, and again, not that these guys are just going to translate one-to-one productivity from college to the NFL, but I mean, there's something there. If they're working together, terrific, right? So again, it's an option there. If the Lions really fell, and if Trask fell, and maybe he's, because the Lions, I think their second round pick is about 41, I think it is. And so he wouldn't be a reach by any means. You're only talking a few different points, and you're also only talking about one particular website's ranking. So he would certainly be in the mix there. But again, we have another huge drop off after Kyle Trask, where we start getting into some names that maybe you haven't even heard about, right? And so again, these guys would be projects. Will the Lions pick someone on this list? Yeah, probably. There are a lot of players, who would offer at least some depth, at least an opportunity for the Lions to look around at some guys, an opportunity for the Lions to get away for some other bad contracts. So yeah, it definitely. I would not be surprised one bit if the Lions do pick a quarterback, but I think the real question is going to be: do they get one of these top 3? Do they go Trey Lance or possibly even Mac Jones or Kyle Trask? Because I think if they do a quarterback, it would most likely be one of those guys, unless they really think they see something here later. Somebody falls, maybe they go best player available for one of the later guys. But really, to me, if you're not taking one of these kind of top tier talent guys and you're just kind of taking a project, there's a lot of different positions you can fill out depth for. A third string quarterback isn't really a huge depth need for NFL teams. You can most likely find those rather easily. So again, is a quarterback on the table for the Lions at 3? Yeah, of course it is. It's in the mix, and I think we'll get a really good look at it here when we jump into this mock draft, which is what I want to do right now, because this is a really, really cool tool if you haven't seen this yet. And again, it's this PFF, PFF.com, Pro Football Focus, and they have a really, really awesome draft mock simulator. And I'll show you that here in a second. And again, this is a pre-free agency mock draft for the Lions. So it's going to look a lot different here, even in the next 3 or 4 weeks when free agency opens. I think on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, I believe, is when it opens. And so there's going to be a lot that looks different. But as of now, no teams have signed anyone. All the Lions have done, at least unofficially, is trade Matthew Stafford and got Goff back, like we mentioned. But let's see what this would look like if we were to take the Lions through a mock draft. And so again, this is the PFF mock draft simulator. What I'm going to do is put the speed on slow. I'm going to leave everything else just as is. We will do all 7 rounds, and of course, we'll be the Detroit Lions. Now, I'm not going to restart this. I promise not to restart it under one condition. I want the Jaguars to grab Trevor Lawrence. Sometimes I've seen it. I've seen it where they take, almost 40% of the time they're taking Zach Wilson. I've seen it, even one where they took Justin Fields. Maybe, right? Maybe. But I think for this mock draft, where things stand now, let's go through it and make sure that they actually take Trevor Lawrence, and then from there we'll just see where the cookie crumbles, and we'll take the Lions, and we'll consider. We could even consider moving up, which I'm not really a huge fan of, where the Lions are currently with their team makeup. But we'll certainly consider some trade downs based on what's there. So let's do this. Okay, we've selected the Lions. We're going to enter the draft here, and we're going to go through each round. So, of course, the Jaguars are on the clock. I'm going to assume the Lions are not going to trade up, or the Jaguars aren't going to want to trade up. Again, would it completely surprise me if I woke up one day and I see that the Lions, or when the Jaguars are on the clock, the Lions moved up? I wouldn't really want to do it, because even Trevor Lawrence, who seems like a sure thing, boy, quarterbacks in the first round have been like a 50-50 thing over the years. It's trending upwards. It has gotten better. I think teams have gotten better about coaching, and it really has nothing to do necessarily with teams sitting or teams starting, because we've seen starters who've gone in right away and have done pretty well. But I think just kind of that the whole educational process of helping college quarterbacks transition to the pro game has just been modernized more, and it's made that transition easier, which is terrific. However, it's still, there is a chance Trevor Lawrence is garbage. There just is, right? And so that's a huge worry. Of course, if Trevor Lawrence, fell, of course the Lions would take him. But the trade up to number one, what that would cost, especially when you consider how Jacksonville needs a franchise identity so badly, there's just no way. So we're going to start this draft. I'm not going to be trading up. I mean, guys, truthfully, I'm not looking to trade up here at all, because there's just nothing here that we absolutely need. We're like, oh, we're one player away. Let's go get that Heisman winning receiver. The Lions aren't in that position, unless there's a guy who can play 11 positions at once on offense and defense somehow. There's just nothing here that would really work for the Lions trading up. So let's start this again. I want to make sure that they pick Trevor Lawrence. Hopefully they do, and they do. So there we go. So Trevor Lawrence went first. He's the, of course, first overall pick for the Jaguars. We won't talk all these picks to death. I mean, you know who Trevor Lawrence is if you're watching any sort of football coverage, including this podcast. I'm sure you know. So let's see what the Jets do, because this is where the draft will start to get interesting. So the Jets go Justin Fields. So they go Justin Fields over Zach Wilson. So Zach Wilson would be the next best quarterback available. Again, not a huge surprise there. A little bit of a surprise. I think most teams seem to think, or most people seem to think, that the Jets are deciding between Fields and Zach Wilson. But again, it could be certainly other players as well. Miami, let's see what Miami does. So they go Penny Sewell. Very, very promising tackle. Get some protection for Tua. So they're going to stick with Tua in this simulation. Let's see what the Falcons do. So they take the first receiver, and it's Jalen Waddle. A bit surprising to see him go before LaMarcus Chase. And so it's very surprising, actually, because most of the mocks I've seen does have Chase going first of the receivers, with possibly Pitts actually being in there in the mix, with teams looking at him as kind of a hybrid, almost like just an oversized receiver. Very, very similar for Lions fans, almost like a Megatron, which, again, you don't want to make that comparison too loosely, but he's an inch taller. They play a similar game, about at least kind of getting to the top of jumps, catching the ball at the top, catching it with his hands, so on. So there are a lot of similarities, at least in some of the tape that I've watched of the guy. He's a lot leaner than I think you may realize if you haven't watched any film on him. He doesn't look like a tight end. He just looks like a lanky receiver who's pretty darn good in the open field, getting separation, and certainly in one-on-one coverage. That's probably his best thing. So we'll talk more about Pitts here, because I'm sure he's going to get drafted very soon. So this is actually a really surprise pick here by the Bengals. They go Patrick Surtain II. So, of course, his father in the NFL as a corner as well. I'm pretty sure, I believe, was his father. And, boy, that's a really interesting pick, because that's going to, we're a pick away from Zach Wilson dropping to the Lions. So, I mean, this is going to be the first conversation piece here is what do we do if they pass on Zach Wilson? I mean, my thought right off the bat is going to be we're either going to get Chase at receiver or Zach Wilson at quarterback. Let's see. So the Eagles are going to select. They go Zach Wilson. So Jamar Chase is the best rated player. The Lions need defense so badly, but just some of that stuff I've heard about Micah Parsons just has me just worried a little bit about character. And I guess I'm probably not as worried as what I think the Lions are. So I am doing this draft through me. So I guess I might be more likely to draft Parsons than the Lions. But Jamar Chase is a better player. He's higher rated. I think he's less likely to run into any sort of issues. So you can see the summary there. It says Chase did what Devonta Smith did this year at 19 years old, and he was doing it against guys like A.J. Terrell and Trevor Diggs, who are currently the best starters in their respective teams. His 24 deep catches that year is still the most we've seen in a single season. And so, he didn't play in 2020. That's maybe not necessarily a red flag. I mean, obviously a lot of players opted out. I totally respect that decision, but it still means they're going to be potentially a little bit rusty. You just don't know. But he had such a nice 2019, and really that's the score that matters. That was a full football season. That was a much more clearer picture of the player that Jamar Chase either is or certainly can be. But again, we just don't know for sure. Of course, we don't know anything for sure. You also have Micah Parsons, right? So in 2019, he also had a great score. He also sat out 2020. So really, he's got better scores, doesn't he, than slightly better scores than Jamar Chase even. But he also has what seems to be that character issue thing here. And so Lions, of course, have huge need at receiver. I mean, if we go back and look here, I mean, Kenny Galladay's gone. Marvin Jones is gone. Amendola's gone. So they absolutely need a receiver. There's no question about that. You know, the other options, we look at some trades. We could trade down. We could trade down to 12, right? So if we were to go back and look here at 12, so let's just see, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We could be looking at a Kwity Paye, possibly Trey Lance, possibly even Kyle Pitts. But to me, I don't know, what could we get for that 12th pick? It is tempting. We could probably pick up another second for this year's draft. You'd still get a receiver. Well, maybe. But Smith and Pitts could definitely be gone. I think for this, we're going to just go Jamar Chase. I'm surprised he fell. So we're going to pick Jamar Chase. The pick is in. Let's see what the Panthers do after us. The Panthers select Kyle Pitts, so there you go. So Devonta Smith still on the board. Trey Lance goes 9th to the Broncos. 10th is Micah Parsons to Dallas. The Giants select cornerback Caleb Farley. 49ers get the Heisman winner Devonta Smith at receiver. Kwity Paye goes to the Chargers, edge rusher out of Michigan. The Vikings grab Jason Owa. Rashawn Slater goes to the Patriots. The Cardinals select Rashawn Bateman, receiver. Raiders select lineman Christian Barmore, defensive interior lineman. Nick Bolton, the linebacker, goes to the Dolphins. So let's pause here. We have now 19 picks in. Christian Darrisaw was the last pick there, who goes to the Washington football team. This brings up the Bears. They're on pick number 20. So again, you know, are the Lions looking to trade up at all? No, we have so many darn needs. If anything, it would have been a trade down. But I think we got the best receiver in this draft, and he fell. We almost had Zach Wilson fall to us. I still really like Kyle Pitts because I think the Lions could use him as receiver. And boy, what a cool combo with T.J. Hawkinson there. But we went Jamar Chase. If it was one of these other guys, even Devonta Smith, who I really, really like, it would have been a toss-up for me between Kyle Pitts and Devonta Smith. I think Devonta Smith would be a better fit for Jared Goff, but you know, Jared Goff, is he going to be here in 2 years? So it's a toss-up. Jamar Chase is going to be a good receiver no matter who your quarterback is for the Detroit Lions, and so that pick made sense. I've seen a lot of people. I mean, he's going to be, you know, potentially a Julio Jones sort of impact receiver. Not that they're the same player per se, but just that sort of impact pick I think it could be a really, really nice building block for a team that needs lots of building blocks. So let's continue. We'll recap the first round here in just a second. But really, nothing too crazy here. There hasn't been a whole lot of mocking of the Lions trading back or trading up into the end of the first. So really, I think we're just going to let this run. There goes Rousseau, I think is how you say his name, the edge out of Miami. Just went 25th. But let's let this run. The Lions' next pick is now 12 picks away in the second round. And again, I think it's pick 41. Yes, pick 41. And so, again, we're letting this go. And just like the Lions hopefully will do in real life, they're not going to be too desperate to do anything in particular. We also don't have the same scouting reports, of course, that an NFL team has, where we would be, trading up because we fell in love with a guy's interview or something like this. I mean, we're just kind of seeing what's available, seeing how we can start to put some pieces. So we're a few picks away here. I like Samuel Cosme. All right, so we're on the clock. And with pick 41, we have two teams interested in making a trade. Let's look at those real quick. So the two teams looking to make a trade are, let's see, the Saints and the Chiefs. So, but that would be a pretty big drop. I mean, almost 20 points, almost 20 spots, over 20 spots for the Chiefs. I don't know. I mean, again, we could always be talking, pick up a first next year, but I think for this, I'm trying to keep the picks in this year's draft for this exercise. So at pick 41, again, what we've done so far, we've gotten ourselves a receiver. I would like to think their Lions are also going to sign a receiver in free agency. And so, I think we're probably okay for now. Again, they can move a guy into the slot. They could draft someone later. They could pick up they might sign two receivers who would be starters for this team. It would not surprise me. So as we look at some of these players available, so let's look at value, right? We have 4 players, or at least, let's see, 6 players who would be a good value pick, some of them above, right? So 41st is where we're picking. We have the 41st ranked player, the tight end out of Penn State, is it Freiermuth? Pat Freiermuth. But again, above him, we have 3 tackles, an edge rusher, and a running back. I can tell you right now, pass on the running back. I'm sure he's a good player, but it's just too early to be picking a running back with where this team's at and the different needs we have. We can also probably pass on a tight end, but I'll give him a quick look. So he's isn't your dynamic field stretcher. He should dominate the middle of the field with his size and ball skills. He was a focal point of the Penn State offense. And 23 catches on 37 targets. So, again, a nice player, but Lions with Hawkinson, again, 2 tight ends is great, but that's sort of a luxury at this point, just as the running back would be. So we're really looking at these 3 tackles and the edge rusher. Let's look at the edge rusher first. So Basham, it's Carlos Basham Jr. out of Wake Forest. He's had nice grades all 3 years. 2020 grades, if they dipped or they went way, way up, I'm not super concerned because just for most teams, the sample size was a lot smaller. And so it says Basham had a bit of a down year, but he notched 112 pressures in the 2 seasons prior. He's a burly 285-pound edge who should be a pocket pusher for years to come. So that's a big, big defensive end there. A guy who could probably even play on the inside, say like nickel packages. Nice player. Would be a need for the Lions. Again, we have Flowers. I believe Hand is still signed. So I guess it's not like a super need, but certainly interior lineman would. And Hand also could go to the inside. Hand's a pretty big kid. He's 6'3", 297. So you could move Hand in. So it's certainly possible, right? I think as you look at Basham Jr., he's got good grades. Yeah, he is a possible pick. Let's look at the 3 tackles now. So we have Elijah Vera Tucker, the tackle out of USC. He did play all 3 years, the last 3 years here. He's improved each of the 3 years, and it says Vera Tucker's quality play at tackle this past season made us feel even better about him on the inside. He earned an 81.8 overall grade and showed some fantastic ability to play in space. Okay, so that's pretty good. He can also move to the inside, which the Lions have a need for. You can see Ragnow's a stud. One of the best centers in the NFL. But our guard play, as much as people like Jonah Jackson, just kind of average. Wasn't super dominant. It's also in his second year. I don't mind having, one of these guys. Maybe these guys kind of battle it out, and no, we're not talking about a guard rotation like Patricia like to do. But we have a need. I mean, even Crosby could be an upgrade. So that's certainly a good fit here. We'd be picking another offensive player, but again, we're not fixing the defense overnight. We don't need to force it, and that's why I talked about that earlier here on the stream. And so I like him. I like the versatility that Vera Tucker seems to show. Let's take a look here and see what it's going to show us here. One of the cleanest offensive tackle prospects in the entire class. He's also a high floor guard. So high floor, of course, meaning that even if he's doesn't reach his full potential, the guy's going to probably still be a starter. Would almost be a bust-proof pick. I hate to say that with the Lions because we've had a lot of bad picks in the second round, but this could be a really, really nice pick in the second round there. So he is an option. Let's take a look at the other tackles here. It's Alec Leatherwood out of Alabama. It says Leatherwood is one of the best run blockers in the country, but still gives up the edge too much to be considered a first rounder. Okay, well, we're in the second. He allowed 15 pressures this year after only allowing 10. In the modern NFL, that worries me. Giving up that many pressures. But it is a little bit fluky, right? This is kind of a weird year. He only allowed 10 in 2019. He got a higher grade in 2020. It's kind of a weird player. I would probably feel safer taking the kid from USC over Leatherwood. So Leatherwood doesn't have quite the athleticism you'd want from a top-tier tackle. He makes up for it. And it doesn't mention his ability to play guard or anything like that either, at least just scanning this quickly. So I'm going to take Leatherwood off our list. I still like Vera Tucker better. And I think Walker Little hasn't played in years or something, is it? Little has played all of one game since 2018. There's no reason why he couldn't be a quality NFL tackle given his physical tools, but he's so far removed from playing the game that it's difficult to assess. Yeah, I mean, that's just, hey, if that guy's in the 5th round or something, sure, but our second round pick just can't do it. I believe Landon Dickinson, as we just kind of look around some of the peripheral players that are maybe a bit of a reach, but not terribly. He had an ACL tear. That worries me. Not in the second round. And again, not that he's not worthy, but just there's other players, right? Let's look at Jabril Cox as maybe the last option here. Otherwise, I really like Vera Tucker, the versatile offensive lineman. I can be going offense with the first 2 picks, but hey, you got to take what comes to you here. So, by the way, 30th. So Vera Tucker's rated as a first-round quality player. Jabril Cox isn't far behind, but technically 15 picks behind. That's half of a round, right? But let's look at Jabril Cox, who's had 3 productive years. Again, even though his 2020 dipped a little bit, he's really dipped the last 3 years. It's kind of a fluky season. So it says across 2 different schools and schemes and 1 week of practice at the Senior Bowl, Cox has proven one thing wholesale: the man can cover. He was the only linebacker to break up multiple passes in the one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl, and he had 4 throughout the week. So that's nice. He had a nice Senior Bowl. He can cover. That's always good. Good size. It says he has ideal coverage traits and a proven track record of performance. We can therefore overlook some run defense issues. But he's still an off-the-ball linebacker, right? He's a guy who potentially might not even play every down. Sorry, I'm just not sold on him. So again, if the Lions are staying put here, because if they start trading way down, there's some other players here, but for me, I'm going Elijah Vera Tucker. Guy who can play pretty much anywhere we need him to play. He can play right tackle. He can play one of the guard spots. So it makes a lot of sense. Let's pause this and we'll speed it up here. So the Lions have 2 picks in the 3rd round. So let's just tear through this here. And then we can just look to plug some holes. While that's running, flip back to the lineup. So again, we've plugged a hole here, which is nice. And again, we'd hope that the Lions would also plug some holes with free agency. But we got a receiver, offensive lineman, defense still untouched. The other thing about the defense, though, some of these guys are going to play better. Trufon's going to be gone. He'll be cut. Han still played well. Flowers played well. So we have 2 defensive linemen now. You'd think, really, both these defensive linemen, these defensive tackles, Williams and Shelton, could be cut. At least one of them most likely will be, but I wouldn't be surprised if both of them are. But let's just say they keep Williams. You'd like to think maybe he can rebound. Jamie Collins Sr., again, didn't have a bad year. Jared Davis ended up having a better year than how it started. I think Tracy Walker can improve a great deal. So, like, just if you did nothing with this defense, you'd think they're going to have higher scores just across the board. The offense, on the other hand, it could be the flip. It could be the actual reverse because, again, with Stafford being gone, all the receivers being gone, we could see a flip-flop. We could say, wow, Dan Campbell's done a great job with this team. He took the same crummy defense and made them pretty decent. Whereas, oh, boy, he's having trouble with the offense. And it might not be anything that Dan Campbell or anyone else did. It's just the way the team has gone. This team's going to sink or swim with Jared Goff this year. They have some talent already under contract. Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift. We have a couple good linemen. I like Tyrell Crosby, but again, worst case, if he's your right tackle, you can live with that. But again, maybe he bumps inside. He's very similar to the guy we just picked from USC who can play these different positions. Crosby can move to right guard and hold his own there. So again, it seems maybe silly that we're picking offensive players, but we're really picking best available players at this point, and actually have literally done that. We've picked the best available players. So here we are in the 3rd round. We have the 72nd pick in the 3rd round. We will also have a pick 88, which is one of the picks we got for Stafford in the 3rd round as well. And so we look at the highest rated player, and it's a cornerback. I can't even say this. Ifeatu Melifonwu, however you say that. But he's a corner. He's got three years of good grades. It says he has freaky tools for a corner who stands 6'3", 213. That's huge. He never earned lower than a 74.1 coverage grade in 3 years of playing time. That's interesting. Syracuse is a bad team, so he might not have been in a ton of coverage as they were losing a lot of games. But he's an interesting pick and certainly a position I would not mind if the Lions got. I liked Aurier. I actually really like him as a player, but again, does he need to be my cornerback too? No. This team might be cutting Justin Coleman, so needing a corner on the inside, Aurier can play there. Of course, they're going to get rid of Trufant, one would think. They, of course, have Okuda. So adding a corner, especially in the 3rd round, it's not like we use the 7th pick on one, is definitely an option. So, but he comes out pretty nice. I actually worry a little bit about his size. I worry about your agility when you're this big, and just how long can you kind of maintain your coverage speed and so on in the NFL with being 6'3", 213. So I'm actually a little bit turned off by his size. Jalen Mayfield, the tackle out of Michigan, he's unlikely to kick inside, so we're going to pass on him. It's just not really anything we need. Tylan Wallace, we already grabbed one receiver. I wouldn't mind grabbing another one. Wallace's career production is second to none in this class. He's averaged over 100 yards a game since the start of 18. He's got track speed and has consistently produced downfield. And again, it would still be a value pick. I feel silly even considering a 3rd offensive pick, but I'm not forcing it. I'm not going to force a defensive player. And this even says, a move to the slot in the NFL could do wonders for Wallace. He may struggle initially outside. 6 foot, 190. Draft eligible year for some reason is 2022, but he's in this draft. I'm not sure. It's not my website, folks. I'm still not really even considering running backs. Michael Carter's got some really nice grades, but just so many other needs, and you can find running backs later. Interior defensive line. This is an absolute position that the Lions could use. Tyler Shelvin out of LSU, he did not play last year, says he's a sure thing in the run game as long as he can keep his weight under control. He earned an 88.3 run defense grade as a redshirt sophomore for the national champs before opting out this past year. I do worry about someone who they're talking about has trouble keeping their weight under control and somebody who sat out a season. I mean, just by default, you're being less active than you would be. I worry about, and again, as I mentioned earlier, I 100% respect the decision to, like, hey, I don't want to be, I mean, I've done this in my life too. I mean, just trying to really shut things down with COVID and everything. So I get that, but I just worry. I don't know. This would be a player, again. This is where the real life versus my little exercise here differs, because I would want to talk to Tyler Shelvin. I'd want to hear what he says and just kind of just try to pick up on him. Because yeah, like they said, his biggest weakness 346, and if the Lions are running a 4-3, he's just not a fit. I like him. I think he could be a good player, but it's Tylan Wallace. I'd rather go with him. Let's look at a few more. So here's another interior lineman. I do like this guy, Ojezuwa. I can't even say these guys' names. There's so many crazy names in this year's draft. But anyway, he's on the smaller side for defensive tackle, which is okay. So is Aaron Donald. But don't let that fool you into thinking he won't hold up against the run. He's been as stout as it gets in that regard for 3 straight seasons as a starter. And you can see it there, 3 pretty good grades. Again, not the same grades that Wallace has. This is a tough decision. Because this is probably a bigger need. Especially if we, if we say Wallace would be a slot receiver. He is undersized, but I'm really not that worried about it. That just means he's probably quick. Put him in the middle. He can move around a lot of places. I mean, Trey Flowers is only a little bit lighter than him. I think Trey Flowers is like 265 or something. So you're about 10, 15 pound difference there between those guys. Good player. Man, this is a tough one. Because I like Wallace. I like the defensive tackle from UCLA. Here's another defensive tackle, and I would probably not want to go much further out than that. So another crazy name I won't even try to pronounce, but there's an interior lineman from Washington. And it says has the first step quicks to be a difference maker at the position, but we never quite saw him put it all together. He earned an 82.5 grade his final season for the Huskies in 19 before opting out. So again, he opted out. I'm not going to hold that against anybody, but it does mean they could come in a little bit rusty. I mean, we saw this with Jeff Okudah with the Lions. Not that he sat out, but there wasn't really a preseason. There wasn't really, he was hurt in the beginning. There was just a lot of, I guess there was a preseason, or was there? I can't remember if there was or not last year, but he missed normal development time, and it mattered. He looked bad. I still believe in Jeff Okudah. I think he'll be a good player, but he had a rough rookie year, and that stuff matters. And I think the last thing the Lions need is a guy coming in and just getting in his own head, like, oh, here I'm on the Lions, I'm going to be another bust. And I mean, it seems like this team's just been plagued with players like that over the years. So I do like this guy. Again, I worry a little bit about him having sat out. But let's pull up his little player profile, and we'll see what's going on. Hey, Ryan. Yeah, Ryan's in the chat. Yeah, Ryan, this is just a new NFL Lions, the real life Lions, just kind of doing a focus on just the team, the offseason, just a little podcast. So similar to your Cardinals podcast, Ryan does a podcast called Long Gone, which covers the St. Louis Cardinals, covers some other some gaming stuff. So sort of like this channel where there's a bit of a little hybrid stuff going on. But so on Wuzruki. Anyway, he never put it all together at Washington, but he can be a quality penetrating 3 technique. So that's nice. He's got really good size, very similar size to Deshaun Hand. So this would give the Lions a much-needed defensive lineman. This was the undersized player. So he's a little bit undersized. Ideally, like what I would love to do, there's just too many picks in between. We have how many picks? 16 picks in between. I would love for one of these guys to fall. But let's see, so if we were looking at receiver, and again, it's not really a need, it's just he seems to be the best available player. He's got really nice grades. I mean, there's going to be a receiver available. We picked 88th. There's going to be some other receivers available down there. Maybe. But it's an option. And again, receiver is not really a must. It's just, the question's more about, would there be another interior defensive lineman around that range? And look at the guys, there's really not. There's a huge drop. We didn't look at this guy. Tommy Togiai. I can't say any of these players' names. I apologize. But defensive lineman out of Ohio State. He would be the last one. He did play in 2020, as you can see, in 87.5. He was rated the 10th best interior defensive lineman. So that's very, very nice. 6'2", 300, so nice size for a 4-3 defense. He is a one-gap disrupting 3 technique with a good deal of room to grow. Okay, so that's nice. You know, it's funny because I don't really, all of these guys I could see being pretty decent. I mean, I like that these guys played last year, but none of these guys are going to be available at 88. And certainly the receiver won't be available. I think we got to go with one of these defensive linemen. Don't trust the corner. I know people like really tall corners, but I don't know. I want my corners to be twitchy. I want them to be able to shift quickly, and you start talking 6'3", that's going to be a problem. Did we look at Tyler Shelvin? Why don't I remember him? Oh yeah, that's the real big guy. But, you know, there's 3 defensive tackles here I like. You know what we could do? I really don't want to. The Lions are really in no position to trade up. But I guess we could try. Because any of those guys I wouldn't mind taking. Maybe Wallace is just a stretch, though, because we have so many other needs. All right, let's pick a guy. So this is the undersized lineman. This is the guy who didn't play last year but can probably break out. This guy steadily improved. He's only played 7 games as a starter, but he's looked damn good. It would be a bit of a stretch. This guy's had stellar grades. I'm going to eliminate the player from UCLA. I'm going to take this guy. We're going to go with the player from Ohio State. I like that he played last year. It sounds silly, but I mean, he was teammates with Okuda. Lions have quite a few players with Ohio State ties. You got Chris Spielman even now in the front office, so I think that's kind of the tiebreaker for me. And so we're flying through here. We're going to assume that those guys got taken. Let's see, we just missed the other defensive tackle. So we picked Togai out of Ohio State. Wow, that one receiver that was supposed to drop to us potentially here got picked. Forfeited. There goes Tylan Wallace. He went to the Chargers at 77. All right. Yeah, look at, we would have gotten, if I took the receiver, we would have had at least this guy. It would have worked out pretty nicely, but that's okay. So, the question, did we take him as well? He was not the undersized one, so we would have, we wouldn't really be a fit. We'd have 3 guys that are pretty much 300-pound linemen. Be nice for that depth, but again, we're still looking. I mean, the Lions at this point are still pulling starters out of this draft. We could definitely use a safety potentially with Dron Harmon most likely being gone. Lions did play a lot of man coverage. Who knows if they will this year. This guy had a really nice 2018 and just kind of pedestrian years after that, so I'm not loving him. Oof, his grades are brutal. I do like Ben Cleveland. I've seen him in a few different mocks that I've done, and I do like him. Only 13 pass pressures on 606 snaps. Would not be a big stretch or anything either. Played last year. He's got the highest grade of the players around him. He's had 3 successful years. I mean, this is kind of, I mean, you're literally pulling a starter here at the end of the 3rd round. And yeah, it would be our 2nd lineman pick, but we would, we think in the 1st round we have a receiver. The 2nd round we went tackle/guard. This would fill in that other spot. And then we took a defensive interior. So we've literally pulled out 4 starters at this point. But I do think I'm going to go Ben Cleveland here. Now at this point, I mean, we're going to be jumping into the 4th round. The Lions don't have a 7th round pick. They have a 4th, 5th, and a 6th, I think or we have 2 more picks left. So we have a 4th, and that must be a 5th round. So we don't even have a 6th. Let's see. Oh yeah, they're up here, 112, 154. So 2 more picks left for the Lions. And again, it could really use just about everything. So best available player, ranked 106, Monty Rice, a linebacker out of Georgia. He's had 3 good scores. I wouldn't mind picking him. Let's see if we can get some more info out of him. Speed and tackling ability is a great starting point. Now Rice needs to have the game slow down. Okay. So his awareness. But again, 5th round pick here. You can teach awareness. You can't really teach speed per se. So I'm good at that. Good size, 235, 6'1". It's good size for a 4'3" linebacker. He hasn't played. Yeah, I'm just going to assume he can't bump to guard just to save some time here. Oh, let's see. Seth Williams. Don't really need a receiver. He's got decent scores, but I like Monty Rice so far. Highest rated. He's got 3 good scores. I'm looking for somebody to basically beat him. We're not going to grab a lineman. A corner is possible. He's not bad. Rodarius Williams, cornerback out of Oklahoma State. So he could be a starter in a man coverage. Looks like a nice player. But we have a bigger need at linebacker, and he's a better player. Just seeing if there's any other high scores. Kendrick Green, I mean, looks like a really nice player, but and I'm a big believer in best available players, mostly early on. Later on, you can start filling out some depth. So, could we grab Kendrick Green? But the Lions drafted 2 guards in last year's draft. I mean, I still think there's some jury out on those guys. Even Logan Stenberg, the jury's going to still be out on a few of those. So, hey, we haven't grabbed a quarterback yet. So that could be in the mix. Jamie Newman out of Georgia. 2 good years. He sat out 2020. Again, this team still has Chase Daniel, but I think he could be a cap casualty. Could Jamie Newman come in and be a backup? Let's see what this profile is going to pull up here and see what it says. So downfield ball placement is his biggest strength. I mean, that could certainly help. If the Lions did bring Golladay back or something, which again, I don't think they should. It's 50-50 whether they will or not. He's as talented as any QB who won't go in round 1. So that's interesting. Take another Georgia quarterback for the Lions. Looking at his yards per attempt, he's got pretty good yards per attempt, and they've improved. I mean, he sat out. He'd be sitting out. He's going to have a few years in between playing football. But I mean, again, Aaron Rodgers did that. It's okay. Jamie Newman is an interesting option. He would be an interesting option. Let's see what we're looking at as far as like linebackers, just to see. Yeah, there's a pretty steady availability. This is the 2 positions together. But let's do just do quarterback here. So 154. I mean, if we were to grab a quarterback, it'd either be Jamie Newman or Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M. Let's see what this one says. After years of hoping for a next step, Mond still looks like just a guy. Okay, that's not good. Yards per attempt is much, much lower, or at least noticeably lower. His profile doesn't say anything. He's got decent grades, but as you look at these two guys, I mean, there's definitely a... Jamie Newman's got some potential. And I like that linebacker, but, I mean, shoot, if you can find a quarterback here in the 5th round. But again, does a backup quarterback help the Lions? The only way it really helps them right now, of course, if Newman turns out to be a sleeper, that's great. But the only way it helps them really is to allow them to cut Chase Daniel, right? So you could let Newman be the backup, perhaps even get him in. I actually don't mind his profile. We have so many darn needs. I mean, just think what this would do. So again, some people might say, well, no, they're going to draft, don't waste a pick here because the Lions are going to pick a quarterback in the 1st round next year. Maybe, especially if they're bad, it's certainly going to be on the table. Because in this draft, we took Chase. We took Jamar Chase, number 7. So he was supposed to go in the 3rd round, is what this is saying here, right? And just think, if he does turn out, if they get a good look at him, and they realize, like, hey, we're okay moving forward with Jamie Newman as our quarterback, then they don't have to take a quarterback in the 1st round, which means you don't have to pay for a 1st-round quarterback. You don't have to extend a 1st-round quarterback. You can get Jamie Newman in here and see, you don't need, the world's greatest quarterback. There are other ways to win a Super Bowl. It certainly helps. I mean, we saw Tom Brady just win a Super Bowl over Patrick Mahomes, of course, and those are probably the 2 best quarterbacks in the league. But it's, there's only one team that's going to get the best quarterback. There's only 2 teams that are going to get the top 2 quarterbacks. And so there are other ways, right? You can build a defense. You can do things like this. So getting someone like Jamie Newman who could come in and play a role, maybe he plays a role like a Kirk Cousins or something like this, more of a, looking at this here, he doesn't look like a game manager to me. His completion percentage is a little bit low, but he looks like he could be something here. The fact that he's actually got 3rd-round talent, and here we are picking him in the 4th round, that's also quite nice. But let's see what Monty Rice, because he might have also had that. He was 4th round. So both out of Georgia, by the way. But I'm going to go with Jamie Newman here. So 4th round, Lions do pick a quarterback, and it's Georgia's quarterback, Jamie Newman. And we'll get one more pick here. Hey, maybe we have something there. We have only picked, I think, 1 defensive player, right? And it's just how it's kind of gone. I've done many of these mock drafts, and they look different every single time. Kellen Mond, by the way, best available player. That's funny. So this is, so this looks like a decent player. Could be at least a guy coming off the bench. Of course, they have Julian Okora, the younger brother of Romeo, who is probably not coming back, maybe, but he'll probably get a bigger contract than what the Lions want to pay him. This guy's had some really nice years when he played guard. Zone scheme center. Well, that's about the one position the Lions don't need on the line. Nico Collins, big receiver out of Michigan. Just decent scores, didn't play last year. Better scores. Hunter Long. Tight end. The Lions will need a 2nd tight end. I mean, I'm sure they're going to be cutting Jesse James. He's played pretty well. Fourth-round talent. Let's see what Ellerson Smith has as far as... And again, these are the PFF scores, so they can always be a little bit different. Come on, PFF. And that's kind of the beauty of when you're in these 5th, 6th, 7th rounds. I mean, you can start picking guys. You can either do it to fill out depth. Yeah, there's nothing here. You can, we can see its size though. Whoa, really tall. You can fill out depth. You can also just, look for some project players. Kellen Mond is somebody I would have taken, but I didn't really like the little profile they had. I mean, it just didn't look like a good fit. I do like Hunter Long. I don't think he'd be a bad player. This edge looks okay. But Hunter Long has recently played. The Lions just need weapons. I mean, Hunter Long could come in and literally start playing. Lions, I believe, are going to. I know the Saints ran a lot of 2 tight end sets, so it wouldn't surprise me to see somebody like Hunter Long on the team. Brady Christensen had a crazy rating. Wow. What is this guy's story? Is likely a guard in the NFL. His best fit will be a zone-heavy scheme where he could step in right away. And this guy looks great. 6'6", really tall for a guard. But again, versatile line. I mean, we'd have our line pretty much. We'd have a lot of different options on the offensive line. That grade is crazy. Milton Williams, really high defensive grade. Probably don't get a lot of summaries on these players down here. It says, with how much Williams has grown over his college career, he's worth a late-round flyer to see where his skill set ends up. He'd be another interior guy. I'm torn because, like, really, like, what the team needs, some more depth on the defensive line. But I really think, like, I like Brady Christensen, looks crazy. Hunter Long is probably the best fit, honestly, because they're going to be running some 2 tight end sets, and Jesse James is just too overpaid. Just looking for any bigger grade. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's down to Brady Christensen, who just, he was the top-rated tackle. And you just wonder, like, look at the year Zach Wilson had. Like, what's going on with Brady Christensen? He's really intriguing. If I hadn't already picked 2 linemen, I'd be really sold on this guy. But again, this team's not getting fixed in 1 year. And I just don't know anything about this guy. I know these 2 guys can be decent players. So let's expand them. I'm going with one of these guys. We're going another offensive player. And this guy's grades have just been fantastic. I'm going to go Brady Christensen. There it is. So let's see what grade we got. It's going to be a lot of offensive players. And this draft will have to go through to the completion here of the 7th round. But PFF will give us a grade on each pick. They'll also give us an overall grade. And, of course, you can also give me a grade if you'd like. Leave a post there in the comments. And I'll reply and try to defend myself, especially if I'm on the attack here. But I'm pretty happy with it. Again, it's not perfect. I would have liked to see more defense as well. But I also, as I said, I think this defense just naturally will be better. If you put even the same dudes out there, they're going to be better in a different scheme. They do a little bit of retooling on the defensive line. Yes, this team needs linebackers. We didn't get any, but that's okay. So we have an overall draft grade of B+. It did not like some of the kind of mid-round picks. It really liked our Jamie Newman pick. So again, that was a good value pick there. Was I really looking to go grab a quarterback in that round? No, but it just kind of worked out that way. Jamar Chase, we for some reason got a B+ grade on. The Lions have no receivers under contract, and he fell to pick number 7, so that one's interesting. But we took 3 offensive linemen, as you can see there. So Vera Tucker, Christensen, and Cleveland. So, we've solidified our offensive line. There's no question there with the options that they currently have with the guys we drafted here, even the guys like Jonah Jackson they got last year, Tyrell Crosby, who's been on the team for a few years. We have some really, and that's okay, right? This defense is bad, but we have locked in a number 1 receiver. We've solidified the Lions' offensive line. We have a tight end, we have a running back, and a quarterback project in really both Jamie Newman and Jared Goff. So I actually like the retooling of the offense. Yes, we only took 1 defensive player. That's kind of crazy, but it was a position of need for sure. And this defense should improve just by mixing up their coverages, just by getting out of the 3-3-5, just by blitzing a little bit more, being less predictable. This defense will be better. They have a really, what seems to be looking like a really, really nice coaching staff. And again, every draft's a little bit different. If you if you all went onto the site and you reloaded the same draft, if we did another one right now, it would look totally different. This is a really, really fun tool, by the way, but it's a really good tool that'll also help you get to know some of these names later on. Like maybe you didn't know Jamie Newman. Maybe you didn't know about Brady Christensen. So it's a really, really fun tool that when come the real life draft and come the offseason and when free agency starts, you're going to be in a really good position to enjoy the draft, which of course we all know as Lions fans as the Lions Super Bowl. So, but yeah, I think that was a really fun activity, and I think it's a really fun way to wrap up this very first episode of Lion Wait. I appreciate you guys checking this out. I really, really do. This was pretty off the cusp, just running through it. We winged a lot of this, and that's okay, because I think it keeps the conversation transparent and honest and straightforward, and a little bit rough around the edges, and perfectly fine at that. So anyway, as I mentioned, I am Mike Lowe. I'm on Twitter at MikeLowe47, and if you could, give me a subscribe. I think I'm like one person away right now from 1,000, so that's pretty cool. And we're going to continue Lion coverage if people are interested. If you're interested, let me know. Again, I do a lot of game streaming, so it's not always Lions talk, but I could always separate out and do separate channels and things like this. But I really appreciate you guys checking this out with me. It was a lot of fun to go through. We've been talking for almost an hour and 15 minutes here, so really, really cool. It went really, really fast, and I had a lot of fun. So again, we'll see. Maybe we got one of these players. If I got one of these players the Lions picked, that would be pretty cool. So again, as I said, let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts there. And again, thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate you checking it out. And I'll see you for episode 2 maybe next weekend. Thanks, everyone.